Right, guys, we've hit 1 o'clock. I know everyone's very, very busy. It's a Friday lunchtime kind of lecture, so I want to kick off. Let me just see this one thing. Thanks for the comment there, Phil. Right, guys. Excellent. We've hit 1 o'clock. We're going to see some more people rolling in, but that's all good. So let us kick off today's So Now You Know lecture, which, guys, today is, of course, our main focus is going to be POPI, the Protection of Personal Information Act, and the fact that we have, in essence, 1 week to go in order to be fully compliant. Okay, so just as an intro to none of you guys, or some of you that may not know us, of course, we recognize a lot of our current clients and our past clients. Love to see you all again. But of course, for those of you that don't know us, I'm Thomas Reisenberger from Legalese. Legalese Solutions. We're a legal advisory that specializes in tech, established companies, startups, creators, and we're very proud of the fact that we're one of the advisories out there that really does understand the tech, the law, as well as the customer that you guys are facing. And I really think that, you know, being a one-stop shop, we can bring a lot of services and value to your guys' offerings. So if you need any assistance, it's obviously not just data-based or POPI focused. If you need any sort of legal assistance across the board, definitely make contact with us and we can jump into helping you how we can. Okay, but today's focus, and of course, as you know, this is part of the So Now You Know series that Legalese runs every few weeks. And there's amazing topics that are being discussed constantly, from e-commerce to commercial matters. I know Kyle just did one recently, to now a focus on POPI. So let's jump into this because I know people are getting a bit nervous. So POPI, the Protection of Personal Information Act, guys, is already in force. However, and just kind of explain to people, it is in force, but we were given a 1-year grace period from 1 July last year to get fully compliant. So what that means is, come 30 June this year, you must be fully compliant. Okay, so you wake up in the morning of 1 July, that is when you need to be fully compliant. Okay, I know some people have seen this kind of notice floating around the internet saying there's an extension until February 2022. Guys, we'll talk about that later. That extension is regarding one particular section 58, not the rest of the act. So if you got that notice and you're thinking, oh my gosh, yes, I have an extension until Feb. No, no, no. That extension is for a very particular small subset of items. So full compliance is still due by end of June. Okay, so let's get into some more of the meat. What I wanted to talk about, and in actual fact, let's just hide that for a second, because I think it get a bit intimidating if I suddenly just drop so much information on you immediately. What I want to do with today's session is I want to focus very much on a practical understanding that I want to impart on you on what is total POPI compliance, because we have a very limited time left. And I can tell you now, to achieve total POPI compliance, I don't want to be the harbinger of doom here, guys, but to achieve total POPI compliance, it can take a matter of weeks, if not months. Okay, that being said, that should not at all be a deterrent for you to at least get going on what you can as soon and as hard as you can, because you need to. Okay, so every journey starts with a step. The idea is today, what I want to do is I want to show you what these steps are. I want to take this somewhat narrative, aspirational, theoretical act, which is POPI, and break it down into much more bite-sized, explainable checklist style items. Why? It'll take this kind of cloud of confusion and cloud of intangible tasks and put it down into legs with particular items that need to be completed. Okay, so certainly it's very good to have this recording for dissemination to the rest of your team. If you want to discuss it with your board, if you need to explain to people what is POPI compliance moving forward at our company, today's presentation is going to do it. It is going to be quite dense and quite intense because I do need to get through quite a lot of aspects of what is considered total POPI compliance. And it may be a bit of a shock to some of you guys because a lot of you thought that maybe POPI compliance is just a simple tick box exercise or you just need a privacy policy. I hate to say it, guys, but this is a major epoch change to our law. And accordingly, it will be a major change as to how you function as a business. Because of course, underpinning the functions that you do at your company is data. And you're processing data at almost every point of contact. You may not even know the points of contact where you're getting data from CCTV cameras where you're taking people's physical representation data, to technical data being processed in the back end from your websites, to taking business cards of people in the streets. There's even a process that must be followed. So guys, it is a fundamental change to the way that you are going to do things, just like when the Companies Act came in and changed everything, and the Consumer Protection Act came in and changed everything. Data and the Protection of Personal Information Act is going to be a massive functional change to the way that you do things at your company. Okay, so in order to take all this narrative theoretical POPI requirements and to kind of percolate it down. That is the focus of today's session, and we will jump straight in. So another thing to also mention is when you suddenly see this very dense slide, I don't want you to really focus on taking notes or something like that. You will have access to the slideshow and everything later. So I rather want you to focus on kind of the overall holistic approaches I'm trying to explain to you. And then you can always deal with the small bits and pieces later. Okay. Everything we're going to be discussing today, we can assist you with. And of course, we will explain if there's certain actions that certainly someone else should be providing you assistance with. For example, security and data engineering. Do not get your lawyer to do that. Okay. Get your IT team to do that. But I will make for you very clear what these items are that we can certainly assist with. But like I mentioned, if you need assistance, we can do all of these things, keeping in mind, of course, that time is of the essence and we are very much under the gun, but we will definitely get you compliant as soon as possible. Okay. And it's very much of a joint thing. Never ever defer. And this is a very good understanding as a base point to do not defer your POPI compliance to somebody else. Yes, get a service provider to help. Yes, get assistance where you can to draft policies and undertakings, but do not simply palm this off to someone else because of the fact that that person may help you now to get compliant, but POPI is ongoing compliance exercise. You need to have an understanding of what these requirements under POPI are yourself. So don't simply palm it off to someone else. You must have an understanding of what these aspects are. Okay, so let's jump headfirst into this. And the first thing I want to explain to you is exactly this breakdown of what total POPI compliance means. Okay, so from our experience of working with this act now for almost 8 years, what I can tell you is we've managed to percolate down total POPI compliance into 3 major legs. Okay, some of them are a bit more priority than others, but if you want to call yourself completely POPI compliant, you need to do all 3. You cannot just do one. A lot of people have come to us saying, I just need a privacy policy. Yes, that's great. Privacy policy is leg 1, but that's about 20% of the pie. There's the other 80%. Okay, so what are these 3 legs? First, and I would say in actual fact, most importantly, and we'll talk about priority a bit later, but number 1, leg 1, is having, and you can see it from my far left column there, is having a comprehensive and very detailed data subject facing privacy policy. Now, what are we talking about being data subject facing? In essence, you need to have a privacy policy that you can hold out to the rest of the world proudly to explain to all of these data subjects, the people whose information you're taking. You're proudly telling them how it is that you are processing that data. And that is why I make a specific point there under that leg 1 about the fact that your privacy policy must be very detailed and it must be bespoke to your operation. Why do I say very detailed? What happens is under a lot of the situations we're finding is that people are using maybe a template or a generic privacy policy, which is fine for a start. The problem is that, guys, your privacy policy is a unique agreement between your entity and your data subjects, which explains the services of data processing that you're providing them. And accordingly, you must be very detailed about that service provision. If you try to cut corners or if you use a generic template, what's going to happen is that the data subject reading that contract of service, that privacy policy with you, they will not get a proper understanding of how exactly you are processing their data for the unique scenarios at your company. They're going to read something and all it's going to say is responsible party, data subject, this data, that data, and they don't get a clear understanding of what actually is going on. That is when you get in trouble. Guys, I think currently there's about 6 or 10 inspectors for the information regulator for the entire country. The inspectors are not the one that are going to report you or cause problems with you. It is your data subjects. If you get a customer like me, a data subject like me, and I read your privacy policy, and it is a template that was not changed and not made bespoke, I will have a problem with it because I cannot understand how you're processing my data. And if you cannot answer to me when I approach you to find out more information, you can't give me an adequate answer, I report you to the information regulator because you are dealing with my asset. That data you have is not yours. This is a major understanding shift that has come about with POPI. The data that you're processing is not yours. The data belongs to the data subject who has given you permission to use it for a very particular purpose and for a very particular time. You must get that major shift concretized in your head. All of the data you're sitting on, mountains of it possibly, is not yours. Okay? It's just yours for a particular time given to you by someone on load. Okay, so Leg 1, privacy policy. It's a public document. You hold it out and be proud of it. Okay? Very bespoke to what it is that you do. And I always say to people, rather give too much information than too little. Tell people exactly where it's going, exactly how you're using it. Obviously, around security measures, don't tell everybody the exact security you're using. But certainly, you must give people an adequate understanding of the things that you're doing. Okay? Otherwise, you get in the trouble. The format of the privacy policy, not prescribed, completely up to you. I spoke to an expert recently that said that one of her clients is using visual representations. They have pictures, they have cartoons in certain places. As long as you can convey to people the data subjects, how it is that you're processing data in your privacy policy, that's great. So the methodology and the format is completely up to you, but make it as user-friendly as possible, because the moment you start to use jargon and you start to obfuscate things, that is when you upset people. Okay, so number 1, public-facing privacy policy. Okay, you should in essence have a privacy policy for all of your external data subjects. And then if you have quite a numerous number of internal staff, you should in actual fact also have an internal privacy policy speaking to the processing of your internal data subjects. Okay, but not really necessary if you have a few or a handful number of staff. You can deal with that in employment agreements. Okay, so number 1, priority number 1, detailed privacy policy. Okay, number 2, and unfortunately I hate to say it, guys, but this is where POPI gets a lot of its bad reputation. Number 2, leg 2, is what we call the actions. It is not called this in the act. You are not going to find the actions in the act. But what we've managed to do is kind of ascertain what these internal systemic data handling requirements are. So what we will be talking about in quite a bit of detail next is what these actions are, because everyone forgets what these to do these actions. But in actual fact, this is the real meat of POPI compliance. Okay, they are internal aspects, which means in actual fact, no one should ever actually see these policies or undertakings, these various actions. They shouldn't actually even engage with them until, God forbid, something goes wrong, in which case the information regulator may come to you and say, where is your privacy impact assessment report? Where is your data flow map? Those sorts of things. Okay, so those actions, guys, are substantial. Our average client takes about 2 to 3 months to complete the actions. Again, I do not know where you're all sitting or how good you are with your data and your environment. You could probably complete it in a few days. But you must be realistic in understanding that the biggest slowdown is going to happen with the actions, the internal requirements that you're going to have to implement at your company. Okay? And then the third leg, very, very importantly, is what we call implementation. Again, not mentioned in the act, but definitely discussed. And what is it? You are onboarding data through various onboarding avenues. You're getting data from your website. You're getting data from telephone calls. You're getting data from people meeting you in the street and giving you business cards. Okay? And interestingly enough, just like right now, you can even derive data from the webinar. But interestingly, I just want to make mention of the fact we will not be processing any of the data today on this call. We're not going to be taking any of the information off it. And of course, none of you can see each other's information on purpose so that we are POPI sensitive. But can you see, you need to start thinking about this when you're dealing with these things. Okay, so third leg, implementation, making sure that you have implemented the correct processes at each of these onboarding avenues. So you know that one of your onboarding avenues is the website. Great. Your website must then have particular processes implemented, such as, do you have a newsletter sign-up form where people can input information? That's an avenue where you're onboarding data, which means that at that input point, you must provide an adequate warning to people saying, by providing us with your information here, you're expressly and actively consenting to our processing of your personal information in accordance with our privacy policy. You need to hyperlink the word privacy policy, and you need to have a little empty click wrap box, which the person has to click before the button submit becomes activated. Now, I've just rattled off 2 of 3 of just the processes that should be implemented for a website avenue. But a lot of you guys can have up to 14, 20 data avenues. Your CCTV cameras must have little warnings. When someone gives you a business card, in theory, you're actually supposed to warn them about POPI apply. But of course, POPI is also very realistic in that it says that, listen, if you couldn't provide the adequate warnings at that exact juncture, you must do so at the most reasonably quickest, next, most practicable moment to do so. Okay, so there is a bit of a reasonable expectations and allowances made in POPI, but that implementation leg is also extremely important. Why? It is, again, just like your privacy policy, it's a way for the public to see if your company is compliant or not. Why? Because I come onto your website and I notice that your privacy policy isn't available. Immediately I know something is a bit strange about you guys. Why is your privacy policy not available? If I'm submitting information on your newsletter sign-up form and there's no warning, why? I'm giving you my personal asset information. Why are you not giving me a copy of the privacy policy and allowing me to accept it by pushing the empty click wrap box? So guys, that implementation leg is also extremely important, and it's actually relatively quick and simple to do. You need to find out what your avenues are, which can take 5 minutes. You sit down and you think about, where do I get my data from? And then you map out the processes that must be implemented. If you do not really know what processes must be implemented, there are some guides online, but of course legalese can assist. And certainly a common sense approach will prevail a lot of the time. And you can look at what other platforms are doing. Again, you obviously cannot copy and paste what other people are doing, but you can certainly look for inspiration, at least to understand what it is that I should be doing going forward. But again, don't copy and paste because it may be slightly different to your operations. So you want to make sure that you have a bespoke scenario. So when we are talking about total POPI compliance, guys, it is all 3 legs. What I want to focus on now is the leg 2 item, because of the fact that it has numerous items involved as part of the actions, whereas leg 1 is a privacy policy and leg 3 is implementation. Clean and clear and finished. Okay. Leg 2, we need to unpack. So before I want to jump into the full list of the unpacking, I found this slide to be extremely useful because it is a list of everything tangible that will come out of undertaking a POPI compliance exercise. So if you want to know right now what it is that I will end up with by the time that I am fully POPI compliant, it's this list, guys. And a lot of these items may sound a bit confusing because you look at the first one, data subject access request policy, that's not mentioned in POPI. If I do Control F of that term, I'm not going to find that. And you're absolutely right, no. But these items from our experience are exactly the physical items that are meant to be produced in order to achieve the aim and the intention listed in POPI. Let me explain that a bit better. In POPI, they'll say something like, you must enable your data subjects to easily contact you, and you must be able to manifest their rights requested with ease. Okay, great. That's a very ethereal, soft explanation of the item and the instruction I need, or the undertakings I need to do. But what is it at the end of the day I need to help people do that? It's a data subject access request policy. It's a policy that explains to people, your staff, what to do in case you get approached by a data subject to action one of their rights. They want to access, or they want to request access to their data, or they want to manifest their rights. So these items I've listed here now, you will not find them exactly copied in the Act because that's not how it works. But we have created this amazing list of what these items actually are at the end of the day that fulfill those narrative functions explained in the Act. So let's go through these. First one, I've kind of mentioned this, a data subject access request policy. It is a physical policy. It is a separate item. It is given to all of your staff. It is an internal document. No one is going to see it. And it explains to all of your staff at their different tiers, information officer at the top, your middle authorized staff. Again, nothing in the Act about authorized staff, but these are your staff members who are going to have the real leg work to do with data subject access requests. And at the bottom, all the other staff. Because remember, all staff of your company have a shared obligation to make sure that you're POPI compliant. So your data subject access request policy is an explanation to all 3 tiers of your staff what to do practically should you get a data subject access request. And guys, it will happen. You are going to get a person like me telephoning, I don't know who. I might be reaching your information officer. I may be reaching your receptionist. I may be reaching the guy sitting in the corner office that doesn't really do much. It doesn't matter. If I phone anyone at your company and I want to access a request, they must know what to do. They don't all need to be masters in the stuff because, of course, like we said, there are certain staff members that are tasked with this. But this policy must explain to all of your staff what to practically do and in order once you receive a request. Okay, very important, very practical, and it's a separate item in your kitty. Okay, next one. We've mentioned this, an outward-facing privacy policy. That's the leg one, absolutely essential. Okay, and remember, that privacy policy that you are drafting is you as the responsible party. We will discuss the roles in the next few slides, but it's very important to understand that as a responsible party under POPI, you are the person deciding what to do with the data that you are deriving from your data subjects. You are taking data for your purposes and you're processing it for your purposes. So your privacy policy is focused on your processing for your purposes. Do not, in your privacy policy, mention your processing for somebody else, for another responsible party. So for example, you're a consultant and you process a lot of data for Old Mutual or Hollard that gives you data to process and give back to them. Guys, your privacy policy is not talking about that operator process. No. Your privacy policy is focused on your processing as a responsible party, the data you're using for your purposes. Okay. Next one, number 3, a privacy impact assessment report. Now, a privacy impact assessment is actually, in theory, only required by companies who are dealing in special categories or miners data, or who are processing large amounts of data. However, it has been suggested by the information regulator that everybody undertake a PIA. And what do you do with a PIA? You need to explain how, in light of your needs to data, and in light of the risk posed to the data subject, should that data get out, you need to provide an assessment as to, is it still reasonable to process that data? So what is that practically going to require? You need to list every single type of data that you process. You need to list where you get it from and the reason as to why you're processing it. You also need to list how you're securing it. That's your side of the table. The second side of the table is, what is the risk posed to the data subject should that data be breached? And having that information now sitting in front of you, you conduct an assessment. You look at your needs to that data and how you're securing it versus the risk posed should that stuff, God forbid, get out. And then you provide an assessment at the end. And is it still, looking at all of the information in front of you, is it still reasonable to continue to process that data? And what may happen, guys, is when you conduct your privacy impact assessment, you may find out that some of the data you're processing, when you look at your needs versus their rights, you'll go, oh my gosh, their rights outweigh our needs, or we may have different ways of achieving our purposes. So it's actually unreasonable for us to continue to process that data, and you need to stop processing that data. So that privacy impact assessment is a large undertaking. Like I said, you need to list and assess every single type of data that you process at your entity as a responsible party. It's a very much of a dynamic document. So as it's being changed, as your processing is changing, as the types of PD that you're taking are changing, you need to go and update that document. Okay. Number 4 there, what you're going to end up with is probably the most substantial item there. It's called a POPI manual. What is a POPI manual? Guys, it is the single document that explains how you process and deal with data at your company. God forbid your information officer gets hit by a bus, the next person can pick up that manual and understand everything about data processing at your company. It is mandatory for all of your staff to read, because all of your staff need to have an understanding, even a little bit, about all of the aspects. Now, that data handling policy, guys, that POPI manual is going to speak to a lot of the aspects that are required and prescribed by POPI. We're talking breach recovery processes, data retention formulas, explanations of roles and functions, explanations of if you're an operator of a responsible party, automated decision-making, data transfer across borders. Can you tell, just from the list I'm rattling off, is a lot to go into that POPI manual. If you do not know what needs to go into that POPI manual, you can look around at other companies' POPI manuals. A lot of public companies make their POPI manual public. Again, absolutely do not copy and paste theirs, because number 1, that's copyright infringement. Number 2, it doesn't help your own people because it's their company. It's not your company that POPI manual is designed for. So it must be very bespoke to your company, but you can certainly look at other people's examples to see what the headings are. Okay, very, very important, the POPI manual. It will be substantial, guys. We're looking 30, 40, 100 pages, depending on the size of the operations. Okay, next one is something called the data flow map. A data flow map, and I like to use the word map because the format, again, is completely up to you. You must create something that explains to you very simply what data is coming into your company and what data is going out of your company. Why is it important to have this? Is that God forbid you guys have a breach at any given point, or you need to understand where your data is at any given point, you can simply pull up this very ongoing dynamic document, which must be updated as things change. You can pull it up and go, I see that from our contractors, we are receiving first names, last names, and invoicing information. Excellent. So God forbid, and it's being stored via this system, getting routed to us. Now, let's say there's a breach along that chain. You know very easily, you can bring up that map and you can go, what data was possibly breached? Well, it's all on the map. It was the contractor's information that got breached at SurveyMonkey, and what data was contained there, first names, last names, and contact details. So very quickly, you can have an understanding of what goes wrong or what your data is and where it is, okay? Extremely important. Why, guys? Mainly around the data breach process. When you have a breach, you need to move quickly. And if you don't know where your data is at any given point, guys, it'll take you weeks, if not months, to find out what is going on. And you will breach your duties under POPIA to inform people timelessly about this breach. So a data flow map, you need to list what is the data coming in, from whom is it coming in, and why am I processing it, okay? Then on the other side is, you're going to also have to list all the data going out. What data is being sent out, to whom am I sending it, and why am I sending it to them? Right? So email addresses, contact details, and first name are going to SurveyMonkey for the purposes of them running surveys for us. And you should, in actual fact, also include a contact name for the person giving you the data or from someone receiving the data so that you can contact them, God forbid something goes wrong. Okay, so data flow map, very important. The next items that you're going to end up with is, you need to make sure that any agreement you have with a party with whom you are swapping data, so maybe clients, your SLA with clients, you're taking some of their data, they're taking some of your data, two-way street. Independent contractors, partners, employees, these are all parties with whom you may exchange data. What you need to do is you need to update every single agreement that you have with these people to include what we call the general data clauses. You can make as much data clauses, as many data clauses as you want, speaking to this exchange of data between you, and the more detailed, the better. But at a bare minimum, you must have what we call the general data clauses that just speak to the minimum requirements by both parties in this exchange relationship. Extremely important if you are taking data from another party where they are giving you their own data subjects data. So they're giving you, let's say, a database of 150 of their own clients to you. Now you need to make sure that they had the right to send you that data in the first place. Otherwise, what you may end up happening is one of their data subjects phones you and says, why the heck have you got my data? I don't know who you are. And unless you had your agreement with that client updated with your general data clauses, which made them warrant that they had the right to send you that data, then guys, you've got a big problem on your hands. So all employment agreements must be updated. All independent contractor agreements must be updated, and all client agreements with whom you exchange data must be updated. That is one of the most time-consuming situations, and I'm sure some of you might be sitting there going, oh my gosh, I have 450 service providers. Then you need to get on it as soon as possible, okay? So also remember that everyone needs to be POPIA compliant. So your independent contractors may be coming to you, your clients may be coming to you saying the same thing. We need to update our agreement. So guys, don't think that you're the only one trying to push a giant rock uphill. People are going to be helping you push the rock downhill. Okay, so you're all going to be helping each other. The next thing that you need to have coming out of a total POPIA compliance exercise is making sure that you appoint an information officer and then register the information officer with the information regulator of South Africa. Okay, appointing an information officer is actually quite a simple undertaking. It does not need to be in a formal contract, but it does, in my opinion, need to be written down in some way or the other. You don't need a 45-page agreement. You can write an email to your information officer, or you can draft a simple agreement. What should go into that agreement as a bare minimum? The requirements of, or the duties of an information officer captured in POPIA itself. I think off the top of my head, it's section 56 or 57. It lists what, or 55 or 56, it lists the duties of the information officer. So at a bare minimum, copy and paste those from the act, stick it in the agreement with your information officer and say, congratulations, sign it, I'll sign it, you're now the information officer. Here's some requirements. You can only hire an information officer that is part of your company. You cannot outsource this to someone outside of your entity. It must be someone within your company. Second, it must be someone with some sort of authority in your company to make decisions and have staff follow those orders. You cannot make an assistant the information officer. It must be someone in your executive or management positions who have the authority to move things at your company and to make calls. Okay, it must obviously also be someone that understands data and well. They don't need to be a master, but they do need to have a very good understanding of the data at your company. Please, however, understand the information officer takes personal and fiduciary liability for all of the processing functions coming out of the entity. If something goes wrong, they can personally go to jail. So I know that a lot of you are thinking, oh my gosh, I am not the one that must be that person. I'm going to put my hand down for that job. Guys, do not worry, there is going to be more guidance in the future about that. But as you can see, it is a very important position, just like it's very important to comply. And this is how serious it is. Okay, so the information registration, on the other hand, I can tell you right now, the portal on the website is broken. It works for about 12 minutes every day. There is another way to do it, which is you can try email the information regulator, your appointment letter and the registration forms. I've also been told that that is broken recently as well. I go check it every few days, it keeps breaking. What I keep saying to people though is keep trying and keep the receipts. I know some clients that even film themselves trying it on the broken portal, just in case the regulator comes to them later, they can say, look, I tried, it broke. Okay, not my problem. Keep going. The reason I say that that's probably one of the most important items too is even if you have the other stuff not really perfected yet, get your information officer registered and appointed. Why? Because if something goes wrong in the interim, at least the regulator knows that you're on the system and they have someone to speak to. If you have no one registered and they do not know how to get hold of you, that's when the information regulator gets upset with you as well. So yes, you may not have everything done in the actions perfect, but get your IO registered. Okay, that'll appease the regulator a bit more. Excellent. The next one that is going to be coming out of this whole process is something called a privacy update notice, commonly confused with your privacy policy. They are not the same. A privacy update notice is you are going to have to send out an email to every single data subject that you have on your system, explaining to them, it's a simple email, it's toned very friendly and excitedly, and it's going to explain to them, hey guys, we have now changed our entire processing of data, our functions and our systems at our company, and here are some of the highlights. And you list some of the highlights of what you have now undertaken to be better with POPI and to become compliant with POPI. You then have to give them an opportunity to see the privacy policy, so you can hyperlink it. And then finally, you must warn the individual data subject that you will be continuing to process the data because they are an existing data subject of yours. You do not need them to opt in. However, you do have to warn them that they have the ability to opt out. Okay, so you do not need a double opt-in to get that person who's an existing data subject to re-opt in. You don't need to do that. However, you do need to warn the data subject as part of that update notice, hey, if you have any problems, or if you're not a data subject, something's gone wrong, you can opt out here, or you can come and speak to us and we'll manually do it for you. Okay, it's privacy update notice, very important. That should all be going out on 1 July, if not as soon as possible after that. Okay. Second to last is all of your staff must be trained in data and the understanding that they're all of a shared duty. And lastly, and probably one of the most important, guys, and something that the lawyer is not going to do, is you must make sure that your data is stored and secured properly. The problem is POPI is not prescriptive as to what these standards are. It says adequate, reasonable industry standards. Great. How long is a piece of string? Thanks, guys. So unfortunately, I hate to say this, there's no standard prescribed. You're going to have to go speak to your IT team, your data engineer, guys that are handling your software, guys that are handling the data storage, and get them to assist you and say, yes, we warrant that the systems we're implementing are in fact adequate, reasonable standards. Okay? Don't get your lawyer to do that. Get a professional in the industry to do that. So at the end of the day, for total POPI compliance, you're going to end up with these items or very similar versions of it. Okay, excellent. I want to talk about, we've actually gone through these kind of, the actions items. So these were exactly what I spoke about: privacy impact assessments, data flow maps, internal POPI manual. Guys, I went into a bit more detail here just to help you if you're going through the slideshow later and you want to remember exactly what those items are and what is involved in them. There's some inspiration and reference material there. Okay, excellent. Now I want to talk to this idea of the two roles that you may fulfill, because it's very, very important to understand this difference. POPI recognizes two main types of people that process data. There is the responsible party, like I said, it's the party that is deciding what to do with the data that it itself derives for its own purposes and its own services. So, example, legalese. When we work with you as a responsible party, I take your first name and your email and your last name and your email address as a client of mine. Why? I need that information in order to service you as a client of legalese. Okay? That information I'm processing yours is as the responsible party. What does that mean? Ultimately, all liability relating to my processing of that data rests with me. Even if I hand it off to an operator to help, the data subject can always come back to me as a responsible party. Why? Because I took the data from them and I was the person that took it for them for my processing needs. Okay, so I can tell you now, out of the 105 people on this call today, 105 of you are responsible parties. You are all processing data of someone external to your company that you are using for your own internal purposes. Okay, some of you may be asking, but I'm a sole proprietor, I'm one-man operation, does POPI even apply to me? Yes. If you've taken even the email address and the name of someone from outside of your company, full POPI compliance required. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're a sole prop all the way to KPMG public company. Okay, it makes no difference. So that's a responsible party. You are all responsible parties, almost guaranteed. Let's now look over to the second role. Now, a lot of you may be also fulfilling this function, whereas some of you may not be. What is an operator, which is the second role, an operator? An operator is, you are taking data, but you're not taking it from the data subject directly. You're getting data from another responsible party. And they're telling you, take that data from me, process it on my instructions. I'm telling you what to do with it. Run an analysis, give me an assessment, run some analytics, and then give that data back to me. You are not processing for your purposes. You are processing for another responsible party's processes. So you are an operator to them. You answer to them. You do not answer to their data subjects. They answer to their data subjects. So you need to go home today and think, am I just a responsible party taking data for my own purposes? Or in any way, are we taking data from someone else, processing it and giving it back to them for their purposes? You may be doing it on one or two grounds, or I know some of our clients, they spend 98% of their time doing that. Why? They are an operator company. They are a consultancy that provides analytics and analysis services. That's what they do is day to day. Okay, so once you know your role, you need to go down the chain. And what does that then require you to do is you need to explain that role to all of your users, and you need to adhere to the obligations of that role. So as a responsible party, where do you explain your role in your privacy policy? You clearly tell people, I'm a responsible party for the purposes of this privacy policy and the data that I take from you. If you're an operator, how do you deal with that relationship? Well, you need to make sure that you certainly have an agreement in place between you and the responsible party giving you that data. And that's a segue onto that next line, which is, if you're receiving data from anybody, guys, if you are the responsible party and it's coming to you for your purposes, you need to explain to people, well, how am I going to be processing it? And how do you do that with a privacy policy? Simple as that. If you're an operator and you're taking data from another responsible party, before you take that data, you must make sure that you have a service agreement in place with that, obviously the other party. You should have one of those anyways, it's good business practice. And in that service agreement, you must have a whole section speaking to this data exchange. Mr. Responsible Party, I'm only going to take this data from you and process it for you if you warrant that you had the right to send me that. Mr. Responsible Party, you warrant that you will adhere to POPI and I will adhere to POPI as an operator. So for all of you operators out there, you must make sure that you've concluded at least a service agreement with responsible parties and speak to data in that SLA. Or you can even have a data processing agreement, which is where the responsible party will send you a data processing agreement and they will speak to great detail about what it is that they demand of you when processing their data. And guys, do not be alarmed if you suddenly get from a responsible party a 65-page DPA. It is very possible that you may get this. I've seen many of them come across my desk already. Why? They can demand, as a responsible party, they can demand whatever they want of you when you are processing their data. It's their data. So they can say to you, I want 14-step authentication verification systems implemented on your laptops. And they can demand that. It has nothing to do with POPI. You can be fully POPI compliant up to your ears. Makes no difference. They are the responsible party giving you their data to process it. They can demand whatever they want as far as standards. And you need to make that decision at that juncture. Do we take this person's business and have to implement all these costly things? Or do we say, listen, it's not viable for us to do this and implement your particular data processing agreement requirements? Unfortunately, we can't take your business. So very important, guys, if you are an operator, you may suddenly receive a data processing agreement from another responsible party, and they may be a monster item. And you need to decide whether you can adhere to it or not. Okay, so go home today and understand, I am a responsible party, what is required, but I may also be an operator, and someone may hand me these major undertaking agreements in order for me to comply with their instructions. Okay. This is also extremely important because it's about empowerment. Guys, if you want to find out more about POPI, and it's very, very important that you do not defer this to a lawyer, you must go do your own research. First place you go is the Act itself. It was drafted in the age of decent drafting. It's called Simple Drafting Movement. Go read the Act. It is not that long. It is clear, but like I said, it's aspirational. It's quite narrative. Okay, but certainly go read it. Number two, do not forget about regulations. Whilst the Act will never really change, there are regulations to POPI. Okay, so you must go see what those regulations are. And especially if any of you are undertaking cold call marketing or marketing in general, you need to go and read the regulations. Cold call marketing under POPI is extremely difficult and extremely onerous, to the point of almost being called silly as to what it is that they require you to do. It follows a strong, hard opt-in approach for cold call marketing, and you will find the layout in the regulations to POPI. Okay, so certainly go check the regulations, and regulations change often. Okay, we will get issued new regulations probably every 6 months to a year because it deals with the practical nitty-gritty stuff of POPI. Okay, next down the list, you must look for notices or directives. Recently, like I said, the information regulator is issuing out these notices. Guys, the portal's broken. Don't worry, you won't get in trouble. Guys, there's extensions to Section 58, Section 62, Section 73. Don't worry. You must keep up to date with those notices. And how do you get them? Keep an eye on the website, the information regulator's website. Okay. And then the last place you need to go check is make sure that the industry in which you're working doesn't have additional requirements when it comes to POPI. Some industries, guys, are setting their own additional codes of conduct. And I know that for some particular industries, the regulator is saying POPI is actually not enough for you. You need to also adhere to an additional set of rules called a code of conduct, which the information regulator will be issuing in the future. If any of you are in financial services, medicine, or education, I can tell you now, you are in the target. You are most likely going to get hit by some sort of additional POPI requirement under a code of conduct. But again, I do not want to scare you because nothing has come out formally yet, other than people in the credit provision industry. So if any of you are on credit provision or credit bureau, you are having a code of conduct coming out quite soon. Okay, so be aware that even though the Act is there, regulations are there, notices are there, your own industry, either associations or code of conduct, may require that you have higher standards. Okay. If you are now stuck on time and money, and I suspect that a lot of you guys are, you maybe have nothing in place or you have very little in place. What I have done here is list a priority of order list that I think, in my opinion, is the most important order of priority. Again, guys, you need to be fully compliant. I cannot say that enough. I cannot, as an attorney, say, oh, just do this and this and this. No, you need to do it all. However, realistically, we have 7 days. These are the most important items to be completed in that time. Number one, appoint and register your information officer. Why? That is the conduit that if something goes wrong, and it will go wrong, if something goes wrong, at least the information regulator can get hold of you. You do not want to be in a situation where the information regulator has had a report about you and cannot get hold of you. If that happens, they will be so angry by the time that they get hold of you, they're going to throw the book at you. They're going to ask to see all the actions. They're going to see everything. Okay. So appoint the registration of the information officer. It's simple. Okay. You can even get a template agreement off a GDPR template style agreement of an information officer appointment letter. Do it. Appoint them and register them. Takes 15 minutes. Okay. Number 2, get your privacy policy done and perfected. Yes, you can start with a template, but do not rely on a template. You need to make it bespoke to your company. You can, if you move, you can get that privacy policy done in a week. Absolutely, guys. Absolutely, you can do it. Okay. Get that privacy policy done, like I said, because it is the most salient item of representing your compliance at your company. You're giving it to everybody. You're putting it on your website. You're holding it out proudly. Make sure it gets done. Number 3 is the leg 3, the implementation. You are taking data from all these different onboarding avenues. Make sure that you have the correct processes implemented in each of these avenues. How do you know what those processes are? You can book a consult with us to go through them, but I can tell you without time, unfortunately, our availability is going to be limited. We may be able to help some of you by that 1 July deadline, but I suspect a lot of you won't be able to be assisted right now, unfortunately. But you can certainly get inspiration and some sort of guidance from the GDPR system, which is the European General Data Protection Regulation. So if you want some advice, what should I put on my website to be POPIA compliant? Look under the GDPR system and they will advise. Okay. Number 4, today, phone your IT guy and say, if you can't do this internally, maybe you've got an internal team that does this, you hold them before the coals and you say, guys, you need to start hauling and you need to explain to me how we are getting our data storage and security up to scratch. Okay. Excuse me. What that may actually involve is not just your data side, guys. You may need to phone someone like Metrofile or a physical data company to assist as well, because a lot of you may be sitting with the old Metrofile boxes or the old, Rolodex cupboards behind you in the storeroom over there that contain 40 years worth of information. That needs to be dealt with too. So whereas your IT guys can deal with your electronic data, you may need to bring in a service provider to explain what to do with the physical stuff behind you in the locked office. Okay, maybe shred it, maybe digitize it, whatever, but you need a plan for that too. Okay, because if your stuff is secure, then at least you won't have the breaches and you won't have to deal with the fallouts from it. Okay. Number 5 on that list is understand the actions. So get your head around what these actions are, that big list of meaty things that you need to do internally, and start putting together a tackle list. Who is going to be doing what here? Who's going to be looking for templates and inspiration from overseas examples? Who's going to contact legalese or another company to assist us with this? Okay. Start at least getting the plan of action down for that, because as you'll see, it's big, but at least if you can delegate this to different members of your staff in small chunks, it'll be done 10 times faster. Okay. And number 6, very importantly, guys, you need to bring all of your staff in. And I suggest doing this on Monday or as soon as possible before that 1 July date. You bring in all of your staff on a webinar, obviously in COVID times, and you say to them, guys, times have formally changed. Come 1 July, we are fundamentally going to change the way we deal with data in this company. Okay. If a single one of you does not understand the severity of what happens here, you need to find out how important this is as soon as possible, and we will assist you on that path. We will have many policies in place. We will have trainings in place. But in the meantime, there are 2 things that all staff must know. Number 1, no staff must either receive data or give out data from 1 July unless they are absolutely sure that they have the lawful right to do so. Gone are the traditional ways that you did things for 20 years, and I know this sucks, but before that person accepts that database from your client and before they hand it off to the marketing company to go run some campaigns, you need to stop and you need to first confirm, do I have a lawful right to receive that data from that person? And do I have a lawful right to send that data to the person? Only once that can be confirmed 120% can you receive the data and send the data. So guys, this will slow down your operations, but all of your staff need to know, gone are the days of willy-nilly just taking that database from Sarah and just giving those phone numbers to Stembiso. You cannot do that anymore, period. Okay, very important. The data chain must have a lawful right for every single provision or receipt. Okay. Number 2, the second thing that you tell your staff is that, guys, should they be contacted by any person off the street who phones them and says, hi, I am a data subject of yours, I would like to manifest one of my data rights under POPIA, they must immediately be polite. They must immediately confirm that that is a valid request. that your company will certainly take the request seriously, that they will get the right person to contact them in due course. And the moment they put that phone down or deal with that email, they immediately send that request to someone at the company in the meantime who can at least put that all in one place and deal with those matters. The staff member does not need to be a perfect data master, but guys, God forbid someone phones you on Friday next week and they say, I want to action a data subject access request. It's the 3rd of July or whatever. If your staff member turns around to them and says, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, what's POPIA? They've committed a criminal offense. Okay, so they don't need to be a data master, but if the receptionist gets a call, if the cleaner gets a call, if your CEO gets a call, if your management gets a call, it doesn't make a difference. Anybody at your company, if they get a call and the person says, I'm a data subject, I want to access my rights, they say, yes, thank you very much for the engagement. Please give me your contact details, which I will obviously only process as a limited function until we have fully onboarded you with our privacy policy to contact you to take this process forward with you. Thank you very much. That way, the person knows their thing will be taken seriously and someone will contact them in due course to deal with it, okay? But they are not suddenly saying, what's POPIA, go away. Then people go to jail, okay? So very important for your staff next week to get done. What I want to finalize today's session on, because I know we're going to wrap up now, there is a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication and disinformation actually being spread around, and I want to go through the most salient ones here. Number one, top left there, you do not get a certificate or anything else to prove your compliance with POPIA. It is a piece of self-regulation legislation. You get no certificate, you get no audit statement, you get nothing. If someone asks you, prove your compliance with POPIA, you can very confidently say to them, that is not possible. What I can get for you is a statement from an attorney or from a third-party industry professional who can confirm that in their expert opinion, we have fulfilled the requirements of POPIA. But this leads me on to my next point, which is, guys, a statement from a lawyer or a statement from an accountant or an IT professional is legally useless. Why? They are not the information regulator. The only person in the country that can confirm if you are compliant or not is the information regulator, not legalese, not anybody. What we can do is we can certainly provide you with an audit, and I can say to you, yes, John, I think that off the basis of my analysis of your stuff, the only thing you have outstanding is a bit more work to be done on your privacy impact assessment report. But in actual fact, I think the rest is perfect. Now, that may be useful to some of you who may be approached saying we need proof from a third party that you are compliant. That may work for some of you. But I want you to feel confident that if someone comes to you and says, where's your proof of POPIA compliance? You can say, there is no such thing. There is no certificate. There is no proof of registration. You don't get like a number at the end of the day with another certificate you stick on your wall behind you. It doesn't exist. Nor can you get a confirmation. Okay? So very much self-regulation. Another thing I want to just mention there, guys, is that notice flying around saying that POPIA is being extended to February 2022 is entirely incorrect. It's only Section 58 that is being extended to 2022, and it'll affect very few of you. Section 58 has to do with prior authorization, which is a very particular type of processing function, as well as people that are moving children's data outside of South Africa to a country who does not have standards of data processing equal to or better than POPIA. Okay, so that may be some of you. Maybe you're moving children's data to a country that has no data protection. Well, then you may need to deal with Section 58. Okay, and also credit bureaus have to deal with Section 58. But at least you've got the extension, so it's great. When we go down now, another one, guys, if you are an operator and you are processing functions, and I mentioned this earlier, you're processing on the instructions of a responsible party. It does not matter how POPIA compliant you are. You can be 190% POPIA compliant, whatever that means. If you're an operator and a responsible party is giving you data and is instructing you to process their data on their standards, they can demand whatever they want. They say, I only want 4 of your staff members to have access to that. I want you to buy your own server to store our data. And they can demand that. It has nothing to do with POPIA compliance. And therefore, it's up to you to decide when you receive that data processing agreement from that responsible party, do we implement those measures or not? And you may have to negotiate. I've dealt with some of my clients in the negotiations where I sit down between the responsible party and the operator client, and I explain to them both what is possible and what's not, realistically, okay? But if you're an operator, do not get freaked out, or do not be surprised, rather, if you suddenly get a 65-page GPA land on your desk one day, okay? Especially from your big clients. If you're working for banks, accounting houses, any sort of accountable institution, I can tell you right now that you are going to get a substantial GPA from them in the near future, okay? The other point I want to make mention there, and I touched on this earlier, those of you that are in data-heavy industries, I'm telling you now, POPI is not going to be enough. You will have some sort of code of conduct or additional notices or directives aimed at you in the future. Do not be surprised and get ready for it. So first get POPI compliant, and then get ready for dealing with more obligations in the future. But who may be able to assist you there are associations. So if you're part of the, maybe the HPCSA, right? So if you're in the medical industry, HPCSA, they're your organization that helps the health practitioners. As a council, they should hopefully also issue out guidance notices to anyone in the medical industry should the regulator come along and say, listen, there's going to be more requirements for you. So lean on your associations to assist you, okay? The green block over there, guys, is a reality check for hopefully not too many of you here, but it does not matter how big or small your operations are. If you are processing even the data of a single natural person or company, so POPI includes companies. If you're processing the data within the borders of the Republic, you need to be fully compliant, okay? Keep in mind, here's a little interesting one though, is if you work with anonymized data only, what I mean by anonymized data, it's data that does not contain personally identifiable information, metadata, aggregated data. It doesn't actually link back to any individual person, not covered by POPI. Go forth and do whatever you want with that data, guys. You can sell it to the highest bidder. Why? It doesn't identify a single person on the planet. So there's no risk if that gets breached or lost, okay? But do not attempt to sell anonymized data or aggregated data unless you are 1000% sure that your data is clean, clear, and properly anonymized, okay? Excellent. The next thing is a major misconception in the market right now. It's something called data localization. It actually stems from other countries' requirements, but not yet in South Africa. This may, however, change. I don't want to scare anyone, so I'm not going to explain to you what is coming through the pipelines, but you do not need to store your data in South Africa. You can use foreign overseas servers to do so. You can use foreign overseas providers to do so. That's called localization. It's the requirement to store your data in the country itself. You do not need to do that under South Africa. However, under certain foreign data system laws, I think the UK's DPA Act, and I know the Chinese have a certain requirement, they require you to store your data within the countries itself. South Africa may change in the future because there is currently a cloud policy and localization policy being debated, but not law yet. And the last thing I want to mention here is a lot of confusion around POPIA versus POPI. POPIA is the Promotion of Access to Information Act. It's a much older act, and it is specifically around access to information that private companies hold or public companies hold. Individual people in South Africa, if a company holds information about you where your rights are affected, you can use a POPIA application to find out that data that they're hosting about you. But a lot of the time, POPIA is now going to be completely made defunct. Why? Because under POPI, your data subjects have that right to now come get that info from you anyways. So a POPIA manual is very different to a POPI manual. They're completely different acts. A POPIA manual, and I'm speaking in generalities now, a POPIA manual is only required for certain industries that have annual turnovers of quite substantial amounts or employee numbers that are quite substantial. So we're talking 100 employees in the hospitality industry with an annual turnover of 40 million rand. Great. Then you need a POPIA manual. But again, POPIA is becoming less and less important because of POPI. So if you're a smaller operation, you may be able to rely on the exemptions under POPIA currently, but those exemptions may run out. And you may also need a POPIA manual. So guys, POPIA is still there. It's just in the back wings, but no one really cares about it because of POPI. That doesn't mean that you don't have to adhere it. So you may need to adhere to it, but your smaller operations, guys, do not be too worried about POPIA. Focus on POPI. Okay. So why do you need to get POPI compliant to finalize this all, guys? Obviously, number one, it's the law. Number two, you need to be compliant because in this kind of ethereal, intangible world that we're all now in on the internet, it's the way that you espouse your professionalism. If I come to your e-commerce platform and you don't have a proper comprehensive privacy policy, I ain't touching you with a 10-foot pole. I'm not doing business with you. Why? You can't even take my data seriously. I'm never giving you my money. Okay. And everyone is waking up to this. Gen Z is based on this. Okay. They understand that the data is theirs and they understand their rights and they will manifest it. Okay. The other one there is, please make sure, this is one of the other the important understandings here is, guys, in POPI, if you are compliant with POPI, you can only receive data from a company that is fully compliant, and you can only give data to a company that is fully compliant, which means that if you are not compliant, you are going to start dropping off the map of every single of these other companies who want to do business with you, because they look at you and they say, oh, I would love to do business with you, Phil. The problem is, Phil, you're not fully compliant with POPI, and in which case, I'm so sorry, I need to take my business somewhere else. So guys, that to me is the biggest motivation. Do not let yourself be unavailable to business. Okay, very important. Another reason, of course, is the sanctions can be big, guys. You can end up, like I said, with a 10-year jail term. People can go to prison for this. But also, please don't freak out. We first start with compliance notices. And only when you keep giving middle fingers to the regulator and you keep breaking the law, then do you go to jail. So please, on 1 July, no one is going to jail. I would even surmise that no one's going to jail for 6 months in South Africa. But again, that's what I think. Okay. I hope that's not a challenge to the information regulator. And then lastly, guys, another motivation for being fully compliant is once you get your data clean and clear, it is amazingly easy to run your company again. You know exactly what you've got, and you can even create a second revenue stream by selling anonymized information. Again, with the proviso that it's all extremely clean and clear and lawful by that point. Okay, so I know we've gone through a lot. I know there's a lot of stuff to do, but I want, hopefully by the end of the session, what you now understand is we have our 3 major legs. You now know what are the target items that we need to actually eventually end up with. So either you can do those yourself using some of the resources that I explained, or you can find a provider that can assist you on those elements. Again, pick and choose, do what you can, but don't defer everything to someone else. You must be part of this process yourself, because it's going to involve a lot of changes at your company, and your lawyer is not always going to be available to answer those questions. So also, we discussed what, as far as a priority of order list, is very, very important. I think that's very valuable. If you're sitting there going, well, I've got 7 days and I've done nothing, stick to that list. It will certainly help. And then also, I hope I've clarified some kind of misconceptions in the market right now. So I know we've all kind of run out of time here. Unfortunately, I can't take Q&A sessions today, guys, simply because of the fact that your question may be very unique to your scenario, which isn't really very relevant to everyone else. But please get hold of me. I know that time is very limited. We're very much under the gun, but if you have a very pressing issue, please send us an email. You can send it to info@legalese.co.za. They will sift through the stuff. They'll send it through to me. And definitely, I will try answer your pressing questions or needs or requests for assistance in the next few days. But as a last final assurance to everybody, what's going to happen on 1 July? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You are going to wake up in the morning, life is going to carry on, you're going to make your coffee and go to work, and nothing is going to change. Okay? Worst case scenario is you're going to get a phone call from some irate data subject who's trying to test you and says, I want to manifest a data subject access request. Great. I know what that is, so I say, sure, no problem. We'll be in touch with you in due course, and we'll handle this within a month. And then you've got a month. So you've still got time. So come 1 July, everyone calm down. You're good. There are many resources out there to help. The regulator themselves knows that probably about 5% of the country is compliant. I'm not joking. Probably only about 5% of the country is compliant. So they know that they're going to be teething problems and issues with this. Guys, their own website is broken. Okay, so we know what we're dealing with here in the situation. And also, as a closing point, I always harp on about this. There is not a single company on this planet that is 100% compliant with data laws at any time. No one. Why? Not even Microsoft. Why? Processing is a dynamic function. You have staff coming and going. You have contractors coming and going. You have processing functions coming and going and technology coming and going. It is a constant, ongoing struggle and compliance exercise. All of you, at best, will be 90% compliant at any time. So don't worry, okay? Just get things going. Okay, so I know we've had a great session today. I'm just gonna see quickly. Obviously, you've got some chats here, and I hope it's been very, very helpful. I see that it was being good for some of you guys. So like I said, I will be ending the session now. Please go take a look at the video on our website. We'll make it available, I think also on our blog. take a look at it, share it, disseminate it. Like I said, we can certainly assist anyone that needs help with POPI or even GDPR, but please understand we're a bit undergun at the moment. So it will take us a bit of time to respond, but certainly we will get you your quotes. Certainly we'll give you some timelines and we can get going on these things ASAP. Okay, so enjoy the rest of your weekend, guys. Take the time to mull it over, to calm down, and to plan. Okay, excellent. Enjoy the rest of your week, guys. We'll see you later.